How are you today? Welcome to Andreas Fröhlich Poker, where I talk about poker news, poker life, and poker strategy. So if you're into that, make sure to hit subscribe. Today it's going to be all about the privatization of poker games, and I'm going to let somebody else speak because frankly, I couldn't have said it any better.
Hey guys, it's been a minute, but I'm back. Another tough conversation, and I was listening to a podcast the other night. I won't mention names, but they were talking about the current landscape of live poker with the private games, and how you just have to adjust, and you have to work on your networking skills, which really could benefit you in other forms of life. And it's not networking, it's dick sucking. Literally you have to suck dicks to get in these games, or you have to bring a whale. And I'm sorry, I don't really see how bringing Benny the whale out to dinner and the strip club is going to transition me into a Fortune 500 company in a couple of years. It's just ridiculous. And I mean, I'm sitting at the Wynn playing in some assy PLO game, and I'm having to listen to Doc Sand's fake laugh for 3 hours. It's unbearable. They have a fucking all Chinese game at the Wynn. That's just racist. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's not networking, bro. It's dick sucking, all right? Call it what it is.
If any poker player out there has some great insights and thoughts about this privatization of poker games, let's get on a tough conversation on the Poker Player podcast. Before I'm going to talk about how this all got started, I just quickly want to make a difference between the old school private games and the new school private games. Old school private games could be anything from your local home game with friends and acquaintances up to a high stakes illegal poker cash game where some people just make millions raking the shit out of people. Nobody's actually winning beside the owner. That's basically the span of old school private games. New school private games, however, are going to be games in a casino. Basically, it's going to be the same games that you play in casinos in general, but, somebody's calling the shots who is going to be allowed to play in that game. There are two hypotheses out there why these new school private games need to be implemented in the casinos. The first hypothesis is that there is a breed of online solver wizards. They came out of their basements, and in the last 5 or 10 years, they flooded the casinos. They are so unsociable. There's nothing like them. They're tanking. They're wearing hoodies and sunglasses. They don't talk. Why are they even there? The second hypothesis is that there are bad regs, and they couldn't win anymore. And now they needed to start those private poker games so they could shut out better players so their win rate would increase. Let's have a deep look into hypothesis number 1. First of all, it's a breed of online wizards. Well, I can tell you something. There's less than 3% of players who have done a lot of solo work on poker. I can assure you that. Most people that are mentioning PO or anything in the casino, you know what they've done? They've done shit. They have maybe spent up to 10 hours looking at some PO solver simulations. But most people who have done actually the in-depth work, they wouldn't even talk about it in the casino, or not often at all. And if so, they would talk about after the poker game, but not during the hands. That's total garbage that's made up. It's certainly not that minority of players who has now contributed to the games being slower, thus tanking. The whole tanking and then not talking at the poker table and being balanced, that's been basically emulation of the live televised poker games. People, sometimes recreational, sometimes professional players, they have been seeing those role models like Tom Dwan and whoever was popular over the last 15 years playing in the live TV games, and they have now emulated that sort of behavior. That's how this all started. That's why the players are behaving like they are today. Another part of that hypothesis is that poker players have become less sociable in the last 10 years. And it's totally not true. Human nature doesn't change in those 10 years. There might be some development in how some people behave, but all in all, the players that you were playing 10 years ago, they're almost the same today, at least when it comes to their level of not talking, of their level of toxicity at the poker table. And if we're really honest with ourselves, or if you look at all the regulars that are playing in the poker games, I would call out 80% of the regulars that are playing poker, myself included, that when they're at their worst, they are on some level toxic. I think that only a minority of poker players I've never seen, being on tilt and being somewhat negative towards other players. I think that's a very small minority. It might not even be 20% after all. Whereas the first hypothesis is just a generalization, the second hypothesis, you can use a little bit of empathy and ask yourself this question: what is it like to be the bad reg? And basically looking at your past, you will find a situation where you were the bad reg, unless you're one of the best. I for sure can remember times where I was just in a game where I wasn't the favorite. And if you put yourself into that situation, wouldn't you think of a way how to get rid of these better players? If you're the bad reg in a game and all these better players in that game keep you from winning, well, there's an easy solution to that. You just somehow get rid of them. And how do you do that? Well, you make the game private. So here's what went down. People noticed what I mentioned in hypothesis number 2, that they could no longer win at the games anymore, or they aren't winning at the pace they wanted to. So instead of just saying it and being honest about it, they looked for a scapegoat. And that's basically what's in hypothesis number 1. They had to use those online wizards or unsociable poker players as a scapegoat for starting this new school private games in a casino, because they didn't want to be honest, because if they were honest, maybe other players wouldn't have bought into that necessity of running this new private game. If you're not convinced yet by this second hypothesis, you basically just have to look at the lower stakes games, which are basically never private, and then look at the higher stakes games. Why do you think that is? Why do you think the higher stakes games is all of a sudden made private, and the lower stakes games nobody gives a shit about it? And look at the lower stakes games as well. There's going to be miserable people in the 1-2 games. There's going to be people talking about P on the 1-2 games. There are going to be people tanking in the 1-2 games. The same player types are going to be all across the stakes. But all of a sudden, there's this need to making the bigger stakes games private. So why is it a bad thing, this whole privatization of poker games in the casinos? Well, it kills the beauty of poker. Before that, no matter where you were from, no matter how you looked like, you could have been black, white, whatever, you could just sit down and play your best poker game. And that's really the beauty about the game. It's so fair on the long run. Anyone who plays a really good poker game could win. Now, that's not true any longer with those private games within the casinos, because basically the highest win rates, they're now just accessible to some people, and some people willing to do certain things. I'm sure Jeffy already said it very clearly what that is. So what can we do about it? Well, first of all, wake up. Spread the word, share this message with people, maybe send them my video, look at the tweets that are out there that are actually covering this topic, and talk about it. Not buying this freaking lie of poker players changing. Poker players have been the same 10 years ago and now. There's not really that much difference. Their attitudes have changed a little bit here and there with a little bit more tanking, just a little bit more people copying some of the all-time greats on TV. That's it. Nothing more has changed. Now, if you like this video, make sure to hit the button down there. It really helps me out on this channel. And if you want to see more content from me in the future, make sure also to hit the subscribe button and notification bell. I'm going to see you for the next video.